Hi, this is Linda from George Jewellery, and today I'm going to read you a fairy tale from this beautiful book that I've had since I was a teenager, published in 1905. The story is called Adalmina's Pearl. There were once a king and queen who had an only child, a little girl named Adalmina, whom they loved very much. When Princess Adalmina was christened, two good fairies, a red one and a blue one, were asked to be her godmothers. This was the custom in the days of the storybook kings, and the fairies did not forget to give the little princess each a christening present. The red fairy gave her a large pearl, so beautiful that the like of it had never been seen before, and it was accompanied by 3 good gifts. "Know," said the fairy, "that so long as Adalmina wears the pearl, she shall become every day more beautiful, more rich, and more clever. But if she loses the pearl, no one can prevent her from losing at the same time the 3 gifts, her beauty, her riches, and her wisdom. She will not recover them until she has regained her pearl." Then the blue fairy said, "Adalmina has received 3 gifts so great that many people could not desire anything greater in all the world. And yet there is still one gift, the best of all, and that I will give to Adalmina, on one condition. So long as the princess owns her pearl and the 3 gifts, my gift will have no power. But if she loses her pearl, her beauty, her riches, and her wisdom, then she will receive from me, to make up for her loss, the 4th gift, and that is a humble heart." With this, both fairies nodded farewell and disappeared in the blue summer sky like 2 white clouds. The king and queen were very pleased, for they thought to themselves, "If only our little princess is beautiful, rich and clever, it does not much matter what her heart is like. We shall take good care of her pearl, and then we can do without the blue fairy's mean gift. Ah, the red fairy knew better what is necessary for a princess. Her gifts were royal ones indeed." The king had a golden crown made which exactly fitted Adalmina's head, and was so contrived that as the princess grew, the crown also grew and fitted her as well as before. On top was a point in which the pearl was set so firmly that it could not possibly fall out. Adalmina wore the crown day and night, when she slept in her little gilt cradle, when she was awake and running around the castle. But the king and queen were so afraid of her losing the pearl that it was strictly forbidden ever to allow the princess to go further than the great gate that divided the king's grounds from the park. And whenever she walked out, she was always accompanied by 4 waiting maids and 4 footmen, who had orders to take the greatest care of the princess and her pearl. They dared not be careless, for the cruel scarlet-clad executioner, with the ugly beard and the dreadful axe, did not understand joking. And so the princess grew up. It happened just as the red fairy had foretold. Adalmina became the most beautiful princess ever seen. She was so lovely that her eyes beamed like silver stars on a spring evening, and wherever she went there was sunshine. She became so rich, too, that it seemed as if treasures absolutely grew around her. The floor of her room was of silver and mother of pearl. The walls were composed of huge mirrors, and the ceiling was of gold, strewn with diamonds. Adalmina ate off gold, slept on gold, and was dressed in gold. Indeed, if it had been possible to eat gold, she would have done so, but it was too hard to bite. And she was so clever that she could guess the most difficult riddles, and remember the very longest lessons, if she had only looked at them once. All the wise men in the kingdom came to ask the princess questions, and they were all agreed that a princess so wise had never before been found in the world, and never would be found in it again. Well, that was all very right and good. There is no harm in being beautiful and rich and clever if one understands how to use these gifts. The king and queen thought in their joy that the princess was the most perfect being in the world, and the worst of it was that Adalmina began to think so herself. When everyone continually told her that she was 1,000 times lovelier, richer, wiser than other people, she willingly believed it, and it made her so proud in her heart that she considered everyone else, even her parents, inferior to herself. Poor Adalmina. This was a great ugly blot on her beauty, and it was very nearly the cause of her losing everything. The older she grew, the more proud she became, and pride brought with it the very ugliest faults, so that Adalmina became spiteful and hard-hearted, bad-tempered and envious. When she saw a beautiful flower in the garden, she trampled it down with her foot, for nothing must be beautiful except herself. And if anyone said of another girl that she was charming and intelligent, Adalmina wept bitter, angry tears, for why should anyone be clever but herself? She scolded everyone who did not flatter her and do exactly as she wished, and yet she despised the most those who were her most willing servants. She was a tyrant, feared by all and loved by none. One day when the princess was 15 years old, she walked out in the king's grounds. When she came to the gate and wished to go into the park, she found it locked, and nobody dared open it for her against the king's orders. The 4 footmen and the 4 waiting maids were in attendance as usual, but for the first time they refused to obey the princess's commands. Then Adalmina got angry, so angry that the sunshine of her beauty was quite clouded over. She slapped the faces of her faithful servants, ran away from them, and climbed over the gate. And when they followed, she ran still further into the park until she could not see the slightest glimpse of them through the green trees. Then, for the first time in her life, Adalmina felt tired and thirsty, and sat down to rest beside a fountain. She even condescended to dip some water out of the fountain with her fine lady's hand, and to drink just as the other folks drink when there is nobody at hand to curtsy and offer a glass of water on a tray. As she did so, she saw her own image in the fountain. "Oh, how beautiful I am," she said to herself, and with that she bent down to look at herself until, splash, down fell the golden crown with its pearl from Adalmina's head and disappeared into the water. Adalmina was so enchanted with her own beauty that she hardly noticed it. But what happened? Scarcely had the water in the fountain become once more still and clear before she saw reflected an image entirely different from her own. She saw no longer the marvellously beautiful princess in her gold-embroidered dress, with jewels in her hair and earrings of flashing diamonds. She saw only a miserable, ugly beggar girl, bareheaded, barefooted, with ragged clothes and unkempt hair. And in a moment all her great wisdom disappeared as well. She became as stupid and ignorant as the most uneducated person. And the strange thing was that at the same time she entirely lost her memory, so that she no longer knew who she was, whence she came, or whither she meant to go. She had only a dim idea that a great change had come over her, and this frightened her, so that she ran away from the fountain, further and further into the forest, without knowing where she was going. Then the darkness of evening began to close in, and the wolves howled in the forest. Adalmina grew frightened and ran further and further away until she saw the glimmer of a light. When at last she reached it, she found a tiny cottage in which lived a poor old woman. "You poor child," she said, "where do you come from so late at night?" But Adalmina would not tell her. She did not even know who she was or where her parents lived. The old woman thought this very strange, but she took pity on her and said, "As you are so poor and alone in the wide world, you shall live with me. I want someone to take care of my goats in the forest. You shall do this, my child, if you are good and kind, and if you can content yourself with bread and water, and a little goat's milk sometimes when we make a feast." Adalmina was quite satisfied, and kissed the old woman's hand with deep gratitude, for without her knowing it, the blue fairy had kept her word. Adalmina had obtained that which was better than beauty, wisdom, and riches, a good and humble heart. She was much happier now, herding goats, eating poor bread, and sleeping on a hard bed of straw and moss. She was better, too, than before, for many costly gifts accompany a humble heart, such as a good conscience, contentment, peace, love, and goodness. And wherever Adalmina went, there was again sunshine around her, only it did not come from her outward beauty, but from the heart within. But meanwhile there had been a frightful commotion at the court when the princess disappeared. It did not help in the least that the poor waiting maids and footmen who had followed her to the gate had been thrown, half mad with fright, into a dark dungeon, where neither sun nor moon ever shone upon them, and where the scarlet executioner with the hideous beard stood with his axe at the door. The king and queen would not be comforted. They ordered everyone to put on mourning, and notice was given in all the churches that whoever could restore Adalmina should have her for his wife, if he would not be content with anything else, and half of the kingdom into the bargain. It was a very handsome offer, and many princes and noblemen longed to gain the prize. For 3 years they rode over the wide world, winter and summer, seeking and seeking, but they never succeeded in finding so much as the golden heel of Adalmina's shoe. At last it happened that the young Prince Sigismund, during his search, came to the cottage of the old woman. She was sitting there dressed in mourning, and it was anything but grand mourning, I can tell you. "For whom are you in mourning, my good woman?" asked the prince. "The king has commanded everyone to wear mourning for our lost princess," answered the old woman. But after all, she was no great loss. It is true that she was beautiful, rich and clever, but folks say that she had a proud heart, and that was worse than anything, because no one loved her. Just at this moment Adalmina came home with her goats from the forest. The prince looked at her and could not understand how it was that a girl so poor and ugly could touch his heart in such a manner that he loved her before he had even seen more than the tip of her ear. He asked her if she had seen the princess. "No," she replied. "That is strange," said the prince. "For 3 long years I have thought of nothing else than my little princess. Now I will build myself a castle here in the forest, and I will live here all my days." Said and done. The prince built himself a castle quite close to the fountain where Adalmina had once been changed. And it chanced one day, when the weather was very hot, that the prince, feeling thirsty, stooped down to drink from the fountain. "What can it be that glitters so wonderfully down in the water?" he cried. "I must take another look." He bent down, put his arm into the fountain, and brought up a golden crown with a marvellously beautiful pearl on the point. Then he remembered something, and hastened to the king's palace. No sooner did the king and queen see the crown than they cried, "Adalmina's crown! Adalmina's pearl! Ah, where is she? Where is our beautiful princess?" Then the king reckoned up that if the princess was still alive, she must be 18 years old. He recalled the prediction of the Red Fairy and began to think it must really have come true. So he had notice given in the churches that all the girls who were 18 years old should assemble at his palace to try on the crown, and she whom the crown fit readily should be recognised as the true lost princess, and Prince Sigismund should have her for his wife. Of course, all the maidens hurried at once to the king's court, and those who were older or younger than 18 pretended not to remember the fact. It was a lovely summer day, and at least 1,000 girls stood there in long rows to try their fortune. The whole day long, from early in the morning till late in the evening, the golden crown passed from head to head, and was tried by all, but fitted no one. At last the girls began to grumble and to say, "The king is making sport of us. Let us draw lots, and the one who wins shall have both the crown and the prince." This was not right, Prince Sigismund thought, and he told them to wait until the sun went down. Not long before the sun set, a watchman was sent to the watchtower to see if anyone else was coming along the high road. The prince cried, "The evening is closing in, watchman. Do you see anyone coming?" The watchman answered, "I see the flowers bending down on the crowns to sleep, for night is near. I see no one coming along the high road." The prince asked again, "The evening is closing in. Do you not see anyone coming along the high road?" The watchman answered, "A cloud is passing over the sinking sun, and the bird in the forest hides its head under its wing. Night is near, and I see no one coming along the road." The prince asked yet once more, "The evening is almost ended, watchman. Do you not see anyone coming along the high road?" This time the watchman said, "I see a little cloud of dust far off at the edge of the forest. Now it is coming nearer. I see a poor herd girl driving her goats before her on the road." "Let us try the crown on the herd girl," said the prince. The other girls, who all thought themselves very much better, cried, "No, no!" But the king ordered the herd girl to be brought before him, and behold, when the crown was tried on her head, it fitted her to perfection. At the same moment the sun went down, and it became so dark that no one could see what the herd girl looked like. But Prince Sigismund said to himself, "Only see now, the good God wills that I should take this poor girl for my wife, and I will do so, for I have seen her before now in the house of the old woman in the forest, and I know that there is sunshine about her wherever she goes." And the people shouted, "Long live Prince Sigismund and Princess Adalmina!" But many of them thought, "After all, she is only a poor herd girl." Then the herd girl with the crown on her head was led into the king's hall, which glittered with thousands of lights. But brighter than all the lights shone the beauty of the Princess Adalmina as she stood before them all, clad in her gold-embroidered robe. For when she regained her lost pearl, she regained with it all the lost gifts of the Red Fairy. But the best of all was that she kept at the same time the gift of the Blue Fairy, a kind and humble heart. And as her memory returned, she remembered how naughty she had been, and how she was afterwards changed, and how she who is poor and ugly is much happier with peace of mind than she who is only rich and beautiful. And she fell on her knees before her father and mother and begged that they and everyone else would pardon her past pride. So the prince and princess were married, amid great rejoicings. The 4 waiting maids and the 4 footmen were let out of the tower. The scarlet executioner with the ugly beard stood his axe in the corner, and the people in all parts of the kingdom said, "Beautiful is Adalmina's pearl, but far more beautiful is a humble heart."